No, Oliver, you can't have any more. Now sit back down and listen to It's a Wonderful Podcast with me and my co-host, Morgan Robinson. If you can't tell from that quite aggressive intro, I mean, I don't know really where that came from. I've just been having a really stressful week. Maybe I just needed to get something off my chest. But hello, we're here, and we are going to be talking about two adaptations of, in my opinion, Charles Dickens' greatest novel, and one of the best novels of all time, Great Expectations. I'm just kidding. It's Oliver Twist, but you should have great expectations for this episode because it's going to be a really fun discussion. Hey, Morgan.
Hello, Nolan. What a lovely intro that was. Well done. I liked the aggression, and I also liked the Great Expectations joke. Inside baseball, applause. Applause.
That just
applause for Nolan. Well done.
I just went with that. I don't know where it was taking me, but apparently it was to a good place.
Very good place. The good place, in fact. Speaking of Great Expectations, the director of the 1948 version of Oliver Twist that we watched for this also directed 1946's Great Expectations.
Well, there you go. The Oliver Twist cinematic universe. Or the Dickens.
The Charles Dickens. The Charles Dickens, David Lean cinematic universe, yes.
Just before we start, there is actually a BBC series that's a Dickens shared universe about the murder of Jacob Marley and all these other characters from his stories trying to solve it.
I can't imagine Fagin doing a very good job of solving a murder.
No, me neither. No. I don't think he's in it much. It's mostly like the other Dickensian stories. The show is literally called Dickensian. It's basically Once Upon a Time with Dickens characters.
I'm sure it's very interesting, and especially a love of anyone that loves Dickens. I'm sure it is a big love of theirs. But yeah, were the two adaptations of Oliver Twist we are talking about today on episode, what the hell number is it, Nolan? 40-something of It's a Wonderful Podcast.
It's gotten so old that I can't even remember, so I feel like that's very accurate to aging.
Yeah. Yes, as we said, the 1948 version, directed by David Lean, and the 1968 musical, directed by Sir Carol Reed. Yeah, I mean, it's quite obvious right from the start which one I prefer, considering
yes.
The musical was my childhood favourite movie. Myself and my great-granddad used to watch it all the time. It's really why I love that movie so much, because I was not the sort of biggest movie-loving child. I'm not from that sort of family where, you know, we would all go to the cinema every weekend and watch a movie when I was 7 or something like that. I didn't really grow up surrounded by movies like a lot of other people we know and such things. But Oliver the musical was one of those that I would watch all the damn time, and still love it oh so much to this day, and can sing near enough every song in the thing, and it's just why I love it so much. I don't know which one you preferred out of these two. I suppose it's kind of a hard thing to answer.
They're both pretty solid adaptations of the book, but I'll start there. As a big shock to you, I'm sure, my first experience with Oliver Twist was reading the book.
Of course, a huge shock to absolutely zero people.
And it's one of my favourite books of all time. Charles Dickens, of course, is one of those writers that you kind of grow up just knowing who he is, even if you haven't read any of his stuff. And Oliver Twist was a character that I related to personally because I was in a foster home as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thankfully they never made us eat gruel. I want to get your take on that, actually. Would you eat gruel?
No, I mean, no. You weren't in a workhouse, though, were you? Because workhouses are a remarkably Victorian, cruel, punishing life.
No, in my foster home, they would make very nice scrambled eggs.
Very nice. Perfect.
And I had like my own little group of friends there. We became like a little family. It was fun, but of course I left that when I was 5.
Yes.
I haven't spoken to anyone from then since. Do kind of miss it sometimes, but yeah, I got adopted by some pretty cool parents, so there
Of
that is.
course, of course, of course.
But it's kind of why I relate to characters like Peter Parker and Harry Potter and Oliver Twist. Obviously, is because I've been through the foster system. I know how that feels like, and to see that kind of portrayed in these movies and stuff is really interesting to me. But the main thing I love about Oliver Twist, and I feel it does not get enough attention as it should, even in if you see lists about literature villains, they'll mention Nurse Ratched, Voldemort. All these ones that you would know. No one ever mentions Bill Sikes, and he is a horrifyingly vile man.
Yes, he is. In every version possible, in the book, in whatever it may be, Bill Sikes is evil.
Ugh.
He is violent. He's brutal. He's a remarkably determined man. But he's just so intense and just brutally cruel to everyone. And I mean, it goes along with he's a career criminal, so you guess it goes along with that. He has to have that hard edge to him. You have to have that hard edge to you to live in Victorian England anyway, but particularly as a criminal, and a successful criminal that Bill Sikes is, you have to not care really about anyone. You have to have a completely black heart.
He's a sociopath. That's what he is, really.
He is. So why don't we start off with Bill Sikes? Because in these two movies, we have Robert Newton playing him. Robert Newton, of course, I found out that he was quite the alcoholic, and
that doesn't surprise me.
Would sometimes struggle on the set of this movie to actually say his lines properly because he was too hammered.
Yay booze! Actually, no, no yay booze.
No yay
alcoholism is not
bad.
It's not a good thing.
No, it isn't.
I like a good scotch every now and then, but
not alcoholism.
Yeah,
too much. It's too much when it gets to that stage. But so we have him playing Sikes in 1948, and 20 years later, or should I say not even 20 years later, 12 years later, as that's when the Broadway musical started, Oliver, starring Ron Moody as Fagin. Not as Fagin, actually. That was no.
Was he not the
Artful
Dodger?
I have just completely misspoke. We were talking about Bill Sikes, and I was talking about Fagin because I love Ron Moody as Fagin. Scratchy, scratchy, scratch that.
We will get
Bill
onto
Sikes.
Fagin because he's another great character, but Bill Sikes.
Bill Sikes is played by Oliver Reed.
I've already spoken how much of I think a great villain he is, but it's not so much that he challenges Oliver's views like a normal villain would. He's really just he's almost the opposite of Fagin in a way, because whereas Fagin could be seen as this sort of criminal, but he's got kind of a fatherly perspective about he generally does care about the kids in the gang. Bill Sikes, I reckon, would drop him in a lake if he had the chance, if it meant him getting away.
Absolutely it would. And we see that, of course, with some of the stuff that Sikes does towards the end of the story.
Oh, damn.
He is very, one-track minded. He does his own thing, and he doesn't care who gets in his way, whether that be Oliver, Fagin, Nancy, whoever it may be. He does not care.
He's like a force of nature villain, almost.
He is. He is rather like that, and it is what makes him so intimidating. I happen to think that Oliver Reed in the musical is more intimidating as a figure.
Well, go into that, because you
Robert
and Oliver
Newton
means more.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Oliver Reed. Maybe it's the sort of really distinguished look of his sideburns, or just his cold eyes. Whereas
I'm gonna get a pickup of his sideburns now.
Yeah, Robert Newton in David Lean's version is kind of, and maybe this is due to his being drunk on set, his sort of eyes are a bit all over the place and his face is a bit all over the place. Oliver Reed is still and dead silent, and he's got that really dead stare, just stone cold eyes.
I'm just looking at it now, and he kind of looks like an evil version of Logan.
I mean, I get that. I also think his costume in the musical is perfect, just with that lazy top hat and the big coat, and the fact that he barely really says any lines, especially when you first meet him, because his first introduction in the musical is a beautiful shot of his shadow emerging from a street lamp, and then him just turning this alleyway corner, and Fagin's come down to basically get the takings off of Bill and take them back to eventually give Bill the money for them. But Bill doesn't say a single word in all of it.
Which I was so surprised at, because I would have thought with this being a musical, they would have made him like a very over-the-top, eccentric kind of criminal villain.
Yeah.
I would almost say he's scarier in this one than the 48 drama.
He absolutely is. In a movie where everything else is so eccentric, especially Fagin.
Oh, very much so.
Oliver Reed's Bill Sikes it's entirely dramatic. He doesn't have any sort of weird villain song or anything like that. It is entirely intimidating, true villain. It is one of the strongest parts of it's one of sort of low-key strongest parts of that particular version for me. It's one that you might not think about straight off. I always will go back to Ron Moody as Fagin, but I might stay for Oliver Reed as Bill Sikes.
I would say he's the better Bill Sikes of the two we watched. The one in the drama, he's fine, but he's what you'd expect from a dramatic version of Oliver Twist. He's just really sleazy criminal who is an absolutely vile human being, because one other character that I love in this story is Nancy.
Of course.
Because of this sort of motherly nature that she has towards Oliver, but then there's this kind of Stockholm syndrome-y thing with her and Bill Sikes.
Yeah.
Which is very tragic. But I believe it was the first ever example of, and I don't like this term at all, but in my studies of it, they called it the tart with a heart.
Okay. I've never heard that term before, but this
was like the 1800s. They weren't exactly the most progressive time.
Oh, no, not at all. I understand the term perfectly. It's not a term I've ever come across. I could see it being some sort of like trope, as it were.
But I kind of love that because and Charles Dickens actually got a lot of heat for this, because they were quite annoyed that he wrote a thief who essentially was good. Like at the time, that's considered commonplace now with all the characters we have like that. But back then, that was considered like, whoa, man, you're going a bit controversial here. Why are you having this thief be a good role model? What are you trying to brainwash our kids? That kind of stuff. So
well, I think
it's a fun point to see how it changes.
I think there's plenty of other controversies in the certain portrayals in Oliver Twist that need to be focused on way more than Nancy the thief being a good person as a controversy.
Nancy being a good person is one of my favourite parts, because she almost becomes like a bit of, I'm not so much a surrogate mother, but it felt more like a big sister. Of course, Oliver does have his motherly figure later on.
Yeah.
But the saddest part for this for me is she's trying to ensure Oliver's safety to get away, and in that, she gets herself brutally killed by Bill Sikes.
Yes, she does.
Like even in the musical, it's kind of unpleasant to watch.
It is. It's those scenes again towards the end, and we haven't structured this episode in a particularly narrative way. We're just letting this conversation go,
Because there's not really much differences between them except
No.
one has songs.
Not at all. I actually think the songs make it end up being paced quite nicely, and it lets you sit in the scenes a bit more. And
it's a nice
wallow
contrast to
with
how
these
evil
characters.
Bill Sikes is. Like, you have all this
Definitely.
happy musical stuff around you,
Exactly.
and then you have Bill Sikes who's just like, he's like when your narcissistic sibling who hates musicals gets dragged along to the theatre.
Quite agree. Exactly. It's exactly the same. And yeah, but that, yeah, the scene of Sykes beating Nancy, it has always shocked me, because Nancy was this real good-hearted, true, loving woman right from the word go. Right as soon as you meet her, you can say, "There's someone I like." And yeah, right from the moment you meet Bill, you're like, there's someone I shouldn't be trusting.
Ugh, there's a scumbag.
I guess it
You
kind of
actually-
works out narrative-wise, but
I
it's
think you
nasty
said last
to watch.
week that Tom Hardy might have played Bill Sikes. I looked that up. He didn't, but that would be a damn good choice now if they were able to do an Oliver Twist.
See, I think it really would.
And I
think it
know
would.
another notable portrayal of Bill Sikes is Tim Curry, which, I mean, that kind of just writes itself.
Tim Curry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he played Bill Sikes in a version of Oliver Twist, maybe for TV or something.
Wow. Okay.
But I'd really love
Okay.
to see a Tom Hardy Bill Sikes.
Yeah, I think it's logical to have Tom Hardy as Bill Sykes.
And the thing with him and Nancy, I mean, you could look at that maybe as a Bonnie and Clyde scenario, but it's clear he doesn't see her
guess.
as an equal at all.
No, I mean, to look at it like that would be considering that the two of them felt each other were very equal, and they would always do stuff together. Look at the end of Bonnie and Clyde; they both die looking at each other in love for the same reason. Look at the end of the relationship in Oliver Twist. Yeah, Sykes brutally beats her to death.
Ugh.
It's a bit different. It's a bit
He's
different.
He's such a despicable guy.
He is.
But I'll give
yes,
Charles
he really
Dickens
is.
credit. He created a villain who you just want to see die. Like, you despise this man.
Absolutely. And oh my god, his death is so satisfying and perfect and kind of beautiful, but also horrific.
And it's different in both versions. Like,
It is.
Subtly. In the book, he loses his footing and accidentally hangs himself out of his own
Yep.
carelessness.
Yeah.
In the 48 version, someone from the angry mob shoots him, he falls back, and I think maybe his spine got broken. It wasn't very clear.
It didn't show it. It did it. It just showed the rope tightening.
Yeah.
I saw it as a hanging because that's what I've known it to be in the book. But yeah, in the musical, there's no hanging at all. He gets shot and he's left dangling.
Yeah. I mean, it's all kind of the similar death, but there's subtle differences in each one. I think... I mean, I guess it makes sense for a musical. You don't really want to sort of show someone hanging by their neck.
Exactly. And it makes sense for the 40s one, the kind of grim, gritty drama that version is, to have the real dark, subtle hanging, and then just the shot of Oliver's face just in complete shock. It just works so much better for that. And both deaths work for their own movies. They don't feel out of place.
Yeah, and in the book, one other dimension I didn't mention for Bill Sikes is he has a dog.
He does. Bullseye!
You know how much I love dogs in movies.
I do.
I hate seeing dogs get hurt in movies. In
Bill
the
Sikes
book,
likes to beat his dog.
Yeah, and that makes me hate him even more. But what I love in the book, and I don't think this was really in any of the movie adaptations, but his dog kind of distracts him while he's on the roof, and then that's why he loses his footing.
Yeah.
So it's like the dog getting his own back. Listen, fuck you, you shitty owner.
Well, it is, because the dog, Bullseye, sort of, he leads the mob to Sykes. And it's it's Bullseye's way of saying, I've endured years of abuse from you. I'm not letting you get away this time. And it's very clever from Bullseye, really, to
Yeah.
lead, the mob and the police and everyone to Bill and Oliver, and of course we all know how Bill ends up.
Hanged.
So well done, Bullseye.
Except in the Disney version of this, Oliver and Company, where they reimagine Bill Sikes as a loan shark. His dogs are like his henchmen, and his death is he gets hit by a train while driving on a fucking subway car. It's ridiculous.
I've never seen Oliver and Company.
It makes no sense. It's not a really good version of the story.
Well, I suppose Disney have to take some... they can't directly adapt in such a way as these others can.
I mean, for a story with a young boy as its lead, it's very dark. And it talks a lot about like social class and
it is
where do you fit in the world and that kind of thing.
That is very Dickens. Nobody wrote real life Victorian Britain like Dickens did. That's what Dickens has always been known for doing. His realism that he puts in his kind of really, really sad realism that he puts in all of his stories. Just this very true portrayal of life in Victorian Britain. Just is very easy to grasp in everything you will read or watch that is Dickens. And I don't think any more so than in Oliver Twist, because you get the hardships of the workhouse. You get the children being sold off, being treated horrendously. Crime, child pickpockets from the age of 6 or something. Brutality, just smog, grim, bleak lives.
This is one story you could not do a modern adaptation of. Like,
No.
You can't set it in current times. It would not work the same way.
You can't. It's so Victorian. It is so exactly Victorian that it only can possibly be Victorian. It's quite unusual because you look at something like A Christmas Carol, right? The basic thing can be and has been moved to other times. Look at Scrooged with Bill Murray.
Christmas Carol, I think, we mentioned this in our episode, it's probably the most adapted story of all time.
Yeah.
Even in not direct adaptations, but are clearly influenced by A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, and obviously that's set in Victorian Britain as well, but the actual setting isn't as important in that story as it is in Oliver Twist. I feel like the setting adds so much to the tone of the story in both versions, and the just the sort of you realise the hardships of all of the characters, and even Bill Sikes. He's only like this because society has willed him. Well, not willed him, but it sort of forced him to have this hard nature about him. And
it's
he
almost
just
what
made
Oliver
that decision.
might have become.
I mean,
if Oliver had stayed at that orphanage and endured so much abuse, after he got out, he might have gone on to become like Bill Sikes.
I mean, you don't know. You couldn't say. He may very well have done. And certainly, if he'd have been kept on at Mr. Sowerberry's The Undertaker, where he suffered endless abuse from everyone involved, and he may have really grown up a very angry man, and you don't know what would have happened. But instead, it ends up quite nice for Oliver, which is nice, really.
We should talk about him as a character first, because I think this story does such a good job at immediately making you root for this character.
Mm-hmm.
It establishes Oliver as someone who's always getting the short straw in life, both literally and metaphorically.
Very literally in the case of the story.
And you guys all know the fucking quote. Please, Can I have some more? I wouldn't want more of that shit, to be honest. That gruel looks disgusting.
Well, no, it does. It looks absolutely awful. However, I would like to ask you which version of Mr. Bumble do you prefer?
I mean, I gotta go with Oliver the musical.
He's so intense. He's so shouty.
But in like a cartoony way, and that's what I was afraid they were gonna do with Bill Sikes. Thankfully, they didn't. But his cartoony shoutiness, I guess if you're showing this to kids, it makes them like immediately hate him right away.
I've always found Mr. Bumble in the musical to be incredibly funny, despite the fact that he's kind of awful. Just because he just gets red-faced and angry.
You want more?
More?
Like you could see his veins popping and shit.
You can. It's really funny. And then, of course, he has his song, which is Oliver. Oliver, never before has a boy wanted more, and that sort of stuff. Where he's dragging Oliver around by his ear, around the workhouse mess hall. But that's kind of fun, even though it's not fun. And then he, of course, has another song, which is Boy for Sale, that comes pretty much right after that, where he's trying to sell off Oliver to the local townsfolk.
What a piece of shit.
And well, people sold children in Victorian Britain. That's just an example of what happened. Oliver, of course, ends up going to Mr. Sowerberry's, the undertaker, and doesn't have a good time there before running away off to London, and that's where the real story starts.
Hardships happen to Oliver. It's almost like Dickens invented the checklist for how to root for a character. Like, is an orphan, is in a workhouse, is treated poorly,
at the workhouse as well,
gets sold off, joins a gang of pickpockets, almost gets murdered by a psychotic criminal.
But in the end, he lives a cushy life in a fancy part of London with Mr. Brownlow. So, yay.
And I believe the relationship to Mr. Brownlow is different in each medium. Like, in the musical, I think he was like his grandson or something.
Yes, I think so.
In the drama, he was just like, I think he might have been another type of relative or someone who just liked Oliver. Whereas in the book, I'm pretty sure he was just someone who came across Oliver. I'm
sure somewhere, is it not like, is the original version of Mr. Brownlow not like, is it like Oliver's father's friend or something like that?
Something like that, yeah, like a sort of friend of a friend kind of thing.
But it is made far more direct in the musical, in that he is his grandchild.
A musical adaptation of it maybe has to feel a bit more wholesome.
I guess it also has to feel a bit more to the point, because it wastes a lot of time with the numbers.
Yeah.
Rather than the actual story. It tells the sort of the bare story, the necessary story, and that is told perfectly well in the musical, but it fills it out with all the great staged musical numbers, which take its runtime up to like a solid 2.5 hours, but it never drags for me.
It never does, although the ending with the musical, I was a little bit put off by it. It's the only gripe I have for it.
Okay, let's go into this then.
Well, we kind of need to talk about Fagin first for this to make sense.
Let's talk about Fagin. Let's talk about Fagin then.
Now,
before
we get into the whole controversy surrounding him, I just want to say Fagin is a great character.
Fagin is a great character.
A fatherly figure. He's Oliver's Mr. Miyagi. He's a really kind man who does... Yes, he does train kids to be pickpockets.
He does.
But in a way, he's giving them more of a family than they have ever done. And then you have someone like the Artful Dodger, who's a bit of a hothead.
He's a delight. Especially in the musical. He's so charming. He's definitely the best child performance in the musical. Yeah. By far and away. Jack Wilde is the Artful Dodger in that version. I forget who played him in the 40s.
I can't remember. They usually just got newcomers for these adaptations because Oliver Twist was such a well-known story.
Well, I believe that Jack Wilde had played a Fagin gang member in the stage play, in the stage musical. The same as, like I mentioned before when I misspoke about Bill Sykes, Ron Moody played Fagin in the stage musical for 8 years until he was cast in the film version. So these are characters that are very familiar with these roles, and
Yeah.
I think it shows very much in the case of Ron Moody. He's actually, and now this is where we can start to maybe put a bit of the controversy discussion into there. Ron Moody himself was actually Jewish, and he was the first.
That I did read.
He was the first Jewish man to play Fagin. Fagin, of course, being a Jewish character. The Alec Guinness version in the 40s is disturbing and off-putting and kind of awful and made me kind of not like the movie.
And very racist, very anti-Semitic.
Very, very, very anti-Semitic and just unnecessary, and I didn't care for it at all. And they are almost...
almost.
It was. They are almost two completely different things. Because all of that is so toned down in all the racist elements to Alec Guinness's portrayal are so toned down in Ron Moody's, and everything in Ron Moody's portrayal is the eccentricity elevated and the energy and the sort of almost comical sweetness to him.
Yeah, he has more of a whimsy in the musical.
Whimsy, yeah. Rather than the paternal nature of Alec Guinness's Fagin. As well as, he's got the bit of sort of... you're a little bit sympathetic towards him.
Yeah, and the thing that sort of bugged me about the musical ending was... it felt a little bit too wrapped up in a bow for that kind of story. Whereas in the book and in the 48 adaptation, Fagin gets arrested and is probably going to die in prison. And there's this last conversation he has with Oliver that's just so tragic, and I think speaks a lot to the setting and the time period that
definitely
Oliver wouldn't really have had the chance to sort of like save everyone. He just sort of had to live with that, and I got a sense from that Oliver would have learned from Fagin the worst and his best parts and probably would have grown up to be a better guy because of it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the musical, it's kind of all wrapped up in a tight little bow and they all dance into the sunset, literally.
It's Fagin and the Artful Dodger dancing into the sunset, singing about how they're going to just carry on with their life of crime just as their little duo.
Honor among thieves, I guess.
Very much so. Very much so, yeah. Who's to say if Fagin and the Artful Dodger will end up getting arrested after the musical ends? We don't know. But I think the only reason it does that is simply because it's kind of a feel-good thing. Because all musicals tend to be eventually feel-good.
I get why they did it. That it feels almost like they didn't think that through. And they just put it in because it was a musical, not so much because it would have served the story better.
I get that, but it does give us the finale song, which is always a repeated song from a little bit earlier in the film, which is reviewing the situation. In this case, where Fagin's singing it. Ron Moody, by the way, great singer, great dancer, love him. I'm reviewing the situation, and he's going over in his head, he's saying, should I turn straight, should I turn clean? Nah, let's not, let's carry on. And that's basically the song.
It felt almost as if they took all the consequences out of it.
Yeah, I get that. It's very unrealistic, but it is.
But I suppose it's
a
supposed
musical.
to be, yeah, I can look past that a bit. And regarding the whole controversy surrounding Fagin, I did look into this, and what Charles Dickens had to say about it was, Well, I'm sorry if people saw Fagin that way in the book, but the way he wanted to write him was focusing more on his sympathetic paternal nature than the fact that he does bad things. I think it's maybe just because of something at the time, and Charles Dickens being a white man, he won't understand Jewish culture as much as he could have.
I would imagine
bit of his bias would seep into it, whether he intended to or not. So I can see why people are put off by it, but I don't think it was made with like malicious intent at all.
No, I don't think the character itself is...
It's probably just like a lack of research at some point, and I know if Charles Dickens existed today, I mean, he'd be roasted on Twitter for that. I mean, I've seen...
It's ignorance on Dickens's part, but it's sort of understandable ignorance.
Who they'll have ignorant things in their book and they'll get roasted on fucking Twitter for it before the book even comes out.
Yeah, it is that. It is originally, it's simple ignorance. And yeah, okay, you can say, well, come on, be better. But you've also got to look at the whole society. It's way more understandable looking back now to see why this character was portrayed this way. Less so when you come to the 1940s.
Yeah, and the 40s version is a complete stereotype.
It is awful.
It's like the Red Indians in Peter Pan. It's that ridiculous.
You know how much I love Alec Guinness. All from Jacob Marley dancing around in Scrooge the musical, to Obi-Wan Kenobi, to Bridge on the River Kwai, to anything. But this is just it's too much. The nose, Nolan, the nose.
My God, it looks like you could... It's so obviously a prosthetic.
I don't even know what's worse. I don't even know what is more racist. The accent that Alec Guinness is using.
Ugh.
The makeup designer. I just don't know. I don't know what's going through people's heads to create Fagin to look like that.
I think I know what was going through their heads. It's the 40s, we don't care.
I mean, 6 million Jews have just died at the hands of the Nazis in Germany.
Yeah.
And you do that 3 years later?
To be honest, I don't blame a lot of people for not really liking this particular version. I only picked it because it's the only version I could think of for the show besides Oliver the Musical.
It's not that I don't like this version. There's a lot to like in David Lean's 1948 version.
The portrayal of Fagin.
It's just exactly. It's just Fagin isn't one of them, and that's so sad to me because of how much I love Ron Moody as Fagin in the musical. He's by far and away my favourite part of that movie.
Hopefully, if there's ever any more versions of Oliver Twist that come out, because you know what's going to happen, they are a bit more like careful with that material, and they don't do what they did in the 40s. I'm sure they would.
No, I'm sure they wouldn't. I mean,
even I said to myself I wasn't going to bring this up, but it was interesting to me anyway. Okay, look, Roman Polanski's a complete piece of shit.
Yes, he is
in real life, but
he's also had a very difficult life.
He was also a Holocaust survivor, and he directed Oliver Twist, and I found that interesting.
Yeah, Roman Polanski is one of the most difficult people to talk about because he has had horrible stuff happened to him, and he has done horrible stuff. It's... I don't know. He has made some wonderful movies.
But he's a piece of shit.
But there's a reason he is not allowed in the United States anymore.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard about this, I mean, you think Bryan Singer's a piece of shit?
Oh dear, we're gonna get into a hole.
I'm not going to compare assholes. But
no, we're gonna get into a hole if we start doing that. We don't. No.
Yeah. Although he did cast Ben Kingsley as Fagin in his version, and that's a good casting choice.
Yeah, definitely.
If they were to do Fagin now, I'd hope it would be a Jewish actor playing him, because like you said with Ron Moody, him being Jewish, he brought that kind of sensibility to it and understanding.
Well, Ron Moody, he didn't he could have very well, been told by whether it was, Sir Carol Reed, the director at the of the musical, or whoever it may be, or the on, in his stage portrayal, he could have been told to ham up the accent and everything. But I think Ron Moody has this great love of playing Fagin. Clearly, and it's this role that he was sort of born to play, and it did not even cross my mind that Fagin was Jewish, having just watched Ron Moody's Fagin. Wouldn't have crossed my mind had I not come to know, after having watched this movie for so many years as a child, that Fagin was Jewish. In the book, in other versions, what Alec Guinness and all, no. But Ron Moody, I just think, embraced the role so much, the character so much. Nothing else other than the simple character of Fagin, and brought just so much energy to it. He has the best songs in the movie. You Got to Pick a Pocket or Two is the best thing to sing if you want to test out the dexterity of your mouth. You can sing that, because it's kind of hard to sing.
Like the Round the Ragged Rocks, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's he also has Be Back Soon, which is a great song, and reviewing the situation, like we said before, he's really great.
I also kind of find it hilarious, talking about the songs, that in the first food that we're shown in this would be in gruel, which literally looks like it's had blood, sweat, and tears put into it.
Probably has, that's why.
And they have a song in this, which you'll all know, Food, Glorious Food, which I think is every school choir's, I think it's on their set list that they get.
Glorious Food. Yeah, it is. It's the opening song.
One of the more notable songs.
It is the opening song. It is one of the more notable songs. It is the big children's number right at the beginning. It isn't one of my favourites, although when I, in my past life as a youth stage performer, that was for 2 years, we learnt a good few songs from this musical, and that was certainly one of them, because we were all children, and that song is sung by all children, and it just works.
We did do a production of Oliver my first year of high school. Regrettably, I couldn't really audition for it because they'd already cast Oliver. I really wanted to be Bill Sykes, but I was in year 7 at the time. I mean, you're not going to take a year 7 kid playing the villain seriously.
No, you couldn't. I mean, I reckon I could make a good Fagin.
I could definitely see you pulling that off. You've got that kind of
or Nancy.
Sit down,
maybe
son.
I could play Nancy
if you wish. I mean,
if I
go ahead.
To. Who knows?
No, I could really see you as Fagin, though. Like, you've got that sort of sit down, son, let me tell you the facts of life voice about you.
Yeah, but also like short temper but kind heart.
Yeah, and in the musical, I think Fagin loses his possessions, which I thought was a really cool part of the ending.
Yeah.
That they sink into mud and
he starts afresh, basically. Yeah. Him and Dodger start afresh.
Which makes the ending where they continue to be thieves feel a bit contradictory.
Well, it's all they know. It's all they know.
We've lost our things. We can start afresh. Let's steal new things now.
It's all they know. And they're probably just very happy to get rid of Bill Sykes.
I would be.
Because Fagin, especially... not so much, actually, Alec Guinness's Fagin, but Ron Moody's Fagin is terrified of Bill Sykes.
But I'm terrified of Bill Sykes.
Terrified of him. Maybe more understandably, considering that Oliver Reed's portrayal of Bill Sykes is so intense and cold, compared to Ron Moody's wild, energetic Fagin.
Do you think Bill Sikes deserves to be on like a top literature villains list? Because he's not on any of them.
I think he must be forgotten then.
Which is kind of sad. I mean, he's a great villain.
It is. It is kind of sad.
Don't get me wrong. I love Nurse Ratchet as much as the next person, but
he's maybe
Bill Sikes some villain love.
He is maybe he's not a very complex person.
No, but I think that kind of fits with the theme of the story.
It does. It does. I think that's why you might not find him on certain lists or certain whatever it may be. He does his purpose for that narrative perfectly. He is one of the most brutal evil characters I've ever come across, but he is simply that. He is simply brutally and evil. And the way, yes, you can try and give him a bit of a good heart with his relationship with Nancy, but that quickly turns to brutality as well.
Is this like the OG Harley Quinn and Joker?
Quite possibly. Quite possibly, actually. That's not a bad analogy. That is not a bad analogy at all. And let's speak of Nancy for a little bit, because she has a good few songs in the musical as well.
I can't remember the name of it, but I'm sure she had one like...
We have It's a Fine Life.
That's the one, and then the one she's using to distract Bill Sikes.
And then, Papa, which she's using to distract Bill Sikes. And then she has her little sort of emotional ballad.
Which I always love for characters like that. I'm a big fan of ballads.
Yeah, but I kind of think it's the worst song in the whole movie.
Compared to everything else.
There's so many good ones, though. It's song after song after song. And we'll talk about the two biggest musical numbers next. Because they're both great as well. But I like two of Nancy's three songs. The more sort of upbeat, crowd-pleasing songs I do like. Especially It's a Fine Life, because that's her sort of introductory song. When you first meet her in the tavern, or pub, or underground bunker pub, whatever it looks like. It's a weird-looking place.
Just serving ale out of barrels,
it's just
I would
serving,
imagine.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's doing. And everybody's having a great time, because everybody's absolutely hammered.
Ale is not the best alcohol.
Well, they didn't have much choice in Victorian
It tastes
times.
Old.
It tastes old.
It tastes like beer that's been left out for too long.
And Scotch doesn't taste old. That's
Scotch
literally
is a
its
very
use.
complex flavour.
Oh, here we go. Yes, but the vintage 1976 was a fantastic year. I don't know if 1976 was a fantastic year. Perhaps it was.
I just know what happened in 76.
I just like the fact that you think ale tastes old, where your favourite alcoholic beverage is literally supposed to taste old.
But it tastes complex, whereas ale just tastes like
old
beer that's been left out too long.
Well,
it tastes like flat beer to me.
Admittedly, I'm not a fan either, so there's that.
Give me a nice, refreshing lager any day over an ale.
Nice. Oh, no,
unless it's a ginger ale, I'm fine with that.
No, still no. Okay, I do want to talk about the two biggest musical numbers in...
You go right ahead. You know more about this musical than I do.
Consider Yourself and Who Will Buy. I think I prefer Consider Yourself as a whole piece. Mm-hmm. I think Who Will Buy is way more impressive. Who Will Buy, I believe, took about 6 weeks to shoot. It is the song that it's the sort of crescendo-like song where where Oliver is first at Mr. Brownlow's house, and he wakes up to this I think it's like a flower girl outside who's singing about selling roses, and everything just builds up and builds up and builds up until the entire Crescent Street is just packed with people singing, and the choreography must have taken so long, and it's just so inch perfectly done. It is it is a marvel to look at, and in a lesser sense, Consider Yourself is similar, which is the Artful
Sort
Dodgers.
of welcome to the family kind of thing.
It's a welcome to the family song. It's the Artful Dodgers song when he first meets Oliver in London. It's similar to Who Will Buy in the sense of the choreography has to be so perfect, and it is wonderful to look at, but it's not quite as big. But I do think the song itself is better.
That's fair. That's just like musical tastes, preferences, and I do agree with you. That song probably feels like it had the most effort put into it of all the numbers.
Do you have a favourite song in that version?
I mean, the one that just sticks out to my head the most is Oliver, because I like sort of the slapsticky nature of it.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Consider Yourself, I do like. But the one you just mentioned, fuck, why am I forgetting the
Who
name
Will
of it?
Buy?
Who Will Buy? Yeah, I just watched this like a couple hours ago. My memory is shit. Who Will Buy? I mean, I love seeing all that effort being put into a number, and it shows.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, Be Back Soon again, which is one of Fagan's, I think should be mentioned as a great song. You know, the cheerio, but be back soon. You can go, but how I'll miss you. I love you, that's why I say cheerio, not goodbye. It's a nice song.
Fagin is such a tragic character, and it makes me so sad, but also happy.
Yeah, in the musical it makes you happy, in everything else it makes you sad.
In the 48 version it makes me sad.
Very
in the book
sad.
It's a bit more developed. So
everything about Fagin makes me sad in the 48 version. I could not look past it. I couldn't. Physically, because
it's literally impossible.
Physically, because the prosthetic nose was that large. It was that large.
If you think we're exaggerating,
just go and Google it.
Just imagine Watto from the Phantom Menace,
Seriously.
but as a human. That's exactly what it is.
Just actually go and Google Alec Guinness Fagin. It's I just don't know. And Alec Guinness, I should mention as well, with the David Lean Charles Dickens cinematic universe. Alec Guinness is also in 1946's Great Expectations.
Expected.
As well as the dude who plays Mr. Bumble in the 40s, in the 40s version. He is in 1946's Great Expectations as well. David Lean clearly liking to use the exact same cast, which is fair enough. He's a great director. He knows how to shoot a movie beautifully in such crisp black and white. Such a moody black and white. I always feel with David Lean, he's always great at. And of course, 20 years later, you've got Carol Reed directing the musical. She's maybe kind of a weird choice to direct the musical when you consider that Carol Reed's most notable other movie is The Third Man, which is the Orson Welles, Joseph Cotten noir film. And I mean, some of the shots in Oliver the Musical are wonderful. I don't think they quite hold up to his work shooting The Third Man, but I don't even think it looks as good as some of the shots in the 48 version. But it's beautifully coloured. Everything's beautifully designed, and the sets and costumes are just wonderful. There's a reason Oliver the Musical won 6 Oscars, I think, for 1968, beating 2001: A Space Odyssey to Best Picture.
Oh man, the stereotypical film fans are gonna love that.
I'm so happy. I always see Oliver as on those sort of undeserved Best Picture lists, and I'm like, I'm the one guy going, it's not undeserved though, is it?
Definitely
It's
deserves
great.
it.
It's great. It's just because 2001 came out on that same year, you know. That's why.
Ugh. Is this another thing where it's like the King's Speech shouldn't have won the Oscar, the Social Network should have? I mean, I love
Probably.
both movies, but King's Speech is also really great.
I haven't seen the King's Speech actually, so I don't
I'd
know.
recommend it. It's pretty good.
But yeah, I'm the one guy that fights for Oliver ahead of 2001, even though I do like 2001.
I
But
like 2001 as well, but
you've
to
just
be
got
honest, I would much rather watch Oliver.
precisely, you have got to be in a mood to watch 2001. You can stick Oliver on any given day, sing along, and have a wonderful time. Which
Indeed,
is not something you can say about 2001, and not something you can say about the 1948 version either.
I think you're gonna love where I'm going with this. Out of these two versions, despite my criticism of the ending, I prefer Oliver.
Yes.
But I will probably read the book more so.
I mean, that's you,
Everything.
though. Of course
That's
you
me.
will.
That's just me. But Oliver is a very great musical adaptation of one of my greatest books, which I can't say for a lot of my books that have been turned into musicals.
Well, no, but you liked Scrooge when we did that at Christmas.
I like Scrooge. Yeah, that's very
And
good.
Might just be Dickensian musicals that
I love
maybe you
that
like.
Dickensian is a term because like the only writer thing I've heard of, I've not heard of like Kingian or
Kingian.
Gamianin or Rollingian.
Just say that one
But
again. Gaimanin.
Gamianin. But I've heard of Shakespearean and I've heard of Dickensian. And I
Yeah.
love that kind of vibe.
What about Austenian, which is Jane Austen?
That
about
also fits.
Brontanian?
Emily Bronte. Yeah.
Oh, the other two Brontes.
Tolkien and then
Tolkienin. I suppose it's Is it Tolkien-esque? Wouldn't you say?
Tolkien-ish or
Tolkien-esque.
something like that. C.S. Lewisian and
C.S. Lewisian. George Martinian.
my God, can you imagine the George Martin version of Oliver
No.
Twist?
No.
All the pickpockets and the kids
All
die.
the pickpockets are beheaded.
Bill Sykes is the only one that survives.
Probably.
Oliver's the one who gets hanged in his version.
Oh, for God's sake! Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Oliver Twist is It's not a difficult story, is it? It's kind of a fairly simple narrative. It's told quite interestingly, but it's
also very influential.
It's insanely influential. But it is quite a simple narrative, but the simplicity works for it. It's not about necessarily the story, it's about the characters and the setting and the little things that happen. The little moments between characters. It's not so much about the complexity of what's going on. The biggest mystery in the whole thing is what's Oliver's parentage.
Yeah, and when you really think about it, that's not really what the story's about.
And no, it isn't. I mean, it's barely mentioned in the musical. Barely mentioned at all. It's more prevalent in the 40s version because the opening is actually Oliver's mother walking in a rainstorm to the workhouse to give birth.
Then that's Oliver. That's more of a hero's journey kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean that's completely nowhere to be seen in the musical, and like I said, the actual mystery of who Oliver actually is glossed over. It's barely mentioned, and it plays a little bigger of a part in the 1948 version, but. Yeah, again, it's not ultimately what the story is about. It is a story about finding, about sort of new experiences and seeing good from bad and learning about hardships, but learning about love and friendship, and it's kind of vague topics, but just told really, really well. And
Good
in
job,
this
Charles
perfect
Dickens.
Good job, Charles Dickens.
Good job, creators of Oliver. David Lean, decent job, but look yourself in the mirror because that nose is fucking ridiculous.
David Lean, well made movie. Well made movie. Forget. He's not even in it. It's not even in it. It's not even. He is. He is in it, and I can't look away. It's awful.
But,
seriously.
I think that'll more or less wrap us up. Now, Morgan, would you like to hear another reason why I picked this movie?
I absolutely would.
Well, you know, as well as being an avid reader, I'm also an avid writer.
You are?
This concept came to me literally a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I've told you a bit about a story I was working on where a kid gets superpowers and it's just there's a social media star as the villain and that kind of thing. I only realized recently how similar the themes are to Oliver Twist. Like, kid runs away from a place, finds a family. And something that I have in my life is I have extreme anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives me these like weird twitches, like if I'm in a place where I get nervous. So I thought, what if I use those twitches as a way to show powers manifesting? Then it becomes more of a like empowering message and a big metaphor for anxiety. And you know how much I love Edward Scissorhands.
I do.
So I thought of combining those ideas, and now the new title of the story is Oliver Twitch.
Oliver Twitch. Oliver Twitch.
I thought of that name 2 weeks ago, and I'm like,
okay.
Holy shit, this has sparked me the same way Moonflower did 2 years ago.
Okay. Well, there you go, guys. That's a little announcement there. A special announcement. And it's a wonderful podcast exclusive announcement. We now break scoops for some reason, even though we're not a news show.
But don't worry, 2 years later, I'm going to be saying, hey, I came up with that scoop. Stop taking credit for what I did.
Oh dear. Well, unless there is anything else you would like to say about either version of Oliver Twist here, I think we've probably said all that we could or should have needed to. And what's been going on, Nolan, apart from coming up with a title?
Well, in the film world, Army Hammer is being looked at for Batman. Fair enough.
Is he though?
Choice.
I thought it was. No. I thought it was debunked.
Well,
as they say.
To be honest, I'd rather see him as a villain. Make him Hush or something.
Ooh, that's not a bad call, actually. See, you always have these ideas that are just like nobody ever thinks about, but probably should. Hush would be
Army Hammer is like a handsome dude, but he's got kind of a crazy eyes thing going on.
He has. He really has. Hush would be a fantastic villain, too. I would like to see a live-action Hush.
Well, we're going to get an animated version of it this year.
I mean, there might have been a version of Hush in Gotham, but I stopped watching Gotham years ago.
I'm pretty sure that was just a bully picking on Bruce Wayne who was called Tommy Elliot.
Probably was.
The way Gotham introduces villains is so silly.
Probably
like some guy will walk into town and be like, "Hello, my name is
villain.
Jonathan Victor Freeze."
Oh dear. Oh no.
My name is Poison Ivy. Hello, I'm Mr. Joe Kerr.
There's probably a reason I stopped watching Gotham, isn't there?
Gotham's so insane and wild. But other news has been breaking. You like the Scream movies, right?
I do.
The Hellraisers?
I've watched the first Hellraiser.
Blumhouse is looking at rebooting them. Yay, I guess. I don't see why they have to do it with Scream. I can somewhat understand a new version of Hellraiser instead of these shitty direct-to-DVD sequels.
A new Hellraiser would be quite interesting. Scream, no, leave it. But Hellraiser...
I saw someone's idea for what a new Scream would be, and I'm like, I instantly don't want that. They thought they'll bring back Maureen Prescott as Ghostface.
I don't know. No. Stop. No.
And
No.
also, Scream is perfectly rewatchable as it is.
It is.
All 4 of them are.
It is, and it's also, it's just...
Without Craven or
It's
Kevin
already
Williamson.
exactly as well. Exactly as well. Wes Craven passed away some years ago now. It's...
And besides, with the current horror market, like,
You don't need
slashers are not really in right now.
Not at all. Not
I mean,
at all.
Halloween
Something like...
did alright, but not like...
It is,
If I think of horror now, it's usually...
Look, Halloween did okay because it was a 40th year. It had John Carpenter back somewhat involved, Jamie Lee Curtis, things just worked out for Halloween. Don't start making 17,000 slashers now, because really something like Hellraiser, which
because supernatural horror is a big thing now.
Which exactly, it's supernatural, it's creepy, it's disgusting to look at for the most part. It's mysterious, and it is very much what is, I mean, not necessarily in, but it's more in than the slashers are in. So
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm all up for a redo of Hellraiser, and not at all up for a redo of Scream.
Neither. Just leave Scream as it is. It's a great series. It's very rewatchable. Have at it, I guess.
I this week, as some of you will know, we are having to record this episode just a little bit earlier because I am in London this weekend, as you are listening to this, for the Top 10 show live with John Roker and Matt Nost. And we're having a great weekend, and it's going to be great. But this week I have been watching the final few episodes of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Oh, it's a delightful show.
It's a great show. After I finished the Good Place season 3, which again is still one of the greatest shows on television currently. I decided, oh look, Kimmy Schmidt's got some, it's the last half of the season of Kimmy Schmidt has turned up on Netflix. So I decided to start watching that, and it's such a happy show for being such a weird premise. It is such a clever show. I must just like these sort of half-hour comedies that have a lot to say in them, without it seeming like they do.
The actress who plays Kimmy Schmidt, I don't know her name.
Ellie Kemper.
Ellie Kemper. The only thing I knew her from was she was the one fancying Channing Tatum in 21 Jump Street.
Well, she was also in. She was also quite in quite a few seasons of The Office.
Ah, that makes sense. But she's a great lead.
She is. She's really good. So yeah, that's what I've been doing this week. What have you been doing this week? Have you been watching anything lately? Have you been to the movies, Nolan? Because I apparently don't go to the movies anymore and just watch movies for this show. So
you know what I've been doing this week?
What?
Deadline after deadline after deadline with some more deadlines, and then I came back here, did another podcast that I had set up with a friend before, and I forgot I had done. For an hour, made some really nice Singapore noodles, came on and did this, and when I get off of here, I'm probably going to go either write some more stuff or finish watching The Dragon Prince on Netflix.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough, Nolan.
Movie-wise, I mean, I've booked a midnight ticket to see Captain Marvel.
Oh, that's interesting. That's soon.
Never been to a midnight showing for a Marvel movie before, so this will be my first. I'm quite excited. Speaking
of that, I think the first sort of reactions are out to Captain Marvel today, and it's seemingly quite positive, as you'd probably expect.
And I'm glad that they're saying that it does feel like a 90s aesthetic, because the trailers have not had that for me at all, so I'm glad to see them wrong.
I can't admit to have been being. I mean, I don't watch the trailers anyway, but sometimes you'll see pictures. You can't get away from the pictures. You can't get away from certain screenshots in the trailers. And in some instances, you know, I don't watch the trailers, but a certain image that I flick past will say, "Oh, okay, that's grabbed me." It's not been like that with Captain Marvel, sadly. I'm, of course, still going to go and see it and support it. And the fact that it is getting these positive early reactions just is great. It's what I would want. It's it's almost the movie that's going to take the MCU forward.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely after the whole Guardians debacle, this is all they've got to have it for the cosmic
It is.
direction they want to go.
And Captain Marvel, Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, is going to become such a key member of the whatever new Avengers or whatever they end up being called. Her Spider-Man, Black Panther, or Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, whoever else is involved. But it won't be so much the old guard.
No, I
we
think
know.
most of them are definitely going to die.
I hope
or retire.
I just hope for some death. I hope for some death.
I can assure you Captain America is definitely dying.
Please. And I love Captain America, Nolan. I love Steve Rogers. Kill him. Kill him. It will be so unsatisfying if you do not kill him.
If the end of Avengers Endgame is let's go for shawarma.
Precisely. Don't need that again. Don't need that again. Screw shawarma.
Shawarma is delicious, but this is your Deathly Hallows Part 2, Marvel.
Screw shawarma. Kill people.
Yeah.
That's about it. I think that's about all we have to say, Nolan. I'm going to go and let you finish off the Dragon Prince and maybe some more writing.
I might also watch some of the Umbrella Academy because it's very weird.
I have not started that, should I?
Yes.
Okay.
It's sort of a weird gothic-y Cold War X-Men type thing with a murder mystery in it. And Ellen Page is in it, so that's always a positive. It's
true. I do like Ellen Page. That's fair. I've seen mixed things about the Umbrella Academy.
I read the comic in high school because I was a big My Chemical Romance fan. And I assumed this would be My Chemical Romance, the comic.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. It is.
The Black Parade is literally like one of the first albums I bought.
Can't admit to being the biggest My Chemical Romance fan.
It doesn't really seem like your style of music, to be honest.
I can't admit to being the biggest fan of music this side of 1980, so who am I to judge?
You at a My Chemical Romance concert would be probably the strangest thing I could imagine. Who wants to see Morgan decked out in gothic clothes with like dyed black hair and lip rings?
I think some people would. Some people would love to see my hair dyed black and me wear a lip ring. I'm sure of it. I am sure of it. Nolan, I think that's going through about do us for this week's episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. And guess what? Next week starts... What does it start?
Are we marching on into Musical March?
We're marching on into Musical March starting next week, even though we actually half talked about a musical today. So we're all sorts of musicals. We love musicals. Musicals are so great, and they don't get talked about by people we know anywhere near as much as they should. So we decided, let's take it upon ourselves to do a load of musicals, and we are covering a load of musicals for the entire month of March on It's a Wonderful Podcast. So you can find the show on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, Castbox, Podbean, all the places that you find podcasts. It will be there, I'm sure. Just search It's a Wonderful Podcast and you'll find us. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. You can follow me on Twitter at the Purple Dawn with a 3 instead of the E in there, because 3 is the magic number, or on Instagram at the Purple Dawn with no 3 odd numbers, because Instagram likes me and Twitter hates me. But But yes, follow, subscribe, and download the podcast feeds, and leave some nice comments over there. We will love you forever. Nolan, where can everybody find you at? What's going on?
You can find me at NolanDean27. You can find me on Instagram at my Instagram name. You can find me on YouTube at Nolan Dean. You can also find a new Stories as Lessons coming very soon about how to train your dragon.
Madness.
And something I'm planning now, hopefully it's going to come out next month. You remember that video I did with Houston Productions about creativity?
I think so.
My good friend Houston Productions.
Your good friend.
I've decided to do another video like that, and I have a really nice guest to talk about. We're going to be talking about LGBTQ rep in fiction, and I'm bringing on AJ White, who's a trans author, someone I know through Twitter and
Very
stuff
nice.
that I'm sharing snippets with. Yeah, he does a lot of body horror and violence in his stories, and you know what my stories are like. They're very warm, whimsical, warm hugs.
That's a good contrast.
That's going to be a great contrast to talk about. We're planning that to come out sometime soon, so look out for that. That's going to be real fun.
Wonderful. Lovely. So yes, guys, go and look out for that. Go and do all the podcasty stuff that I've told you to go and do. And until Musical March, guys, I guess that's it from me, Nolan. See us out, maybe with a song. No, he's not going to give us a song.
If you want more episodes of this, you can ask for them, because we're kind and we'll give you to them. Right, Oliver?
Please, sir. I'm Oliver in this scenario. Yeah, this outro is weird, Nolan. This outro is the weirdest outro you've ever done. Please, sir, I don't want any more of your disgusting gruel.
Well, we're sending you to Shrek Swamp then. Bye, guys.
Perfect. Bye, guys.